Hi, I'm sorry to be late.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Thank you for showing up. You're here, and that's the most important thing. I appreciate it. How are you, Meira?
I'm good. How are you both?
Doing good, doing
Good.
good.
Hi, Fanny. I don't know that I've ever even spoken to you.
I know that's what we were saying. It's crazy that I actually never met you.
We haven't crossed paths. That's
I
right.
know,
Yeah.
weird.
Well then, since we're all here, and I don't want to keep anybody's time, why don't we just begin and I'm gonna do a brief introduction and then you both can just kind of introduce yourselves a little bit and then we can jump right in. So thank you both for coming. Happy 2021 and the new year. Let us hope that things, are more prosperous and better than the last one. I'm so incredibly excited to have the both of you here, not only because of the artistry and the work that you all have been doing over so many decades, but truly the content and the thoughts and the ideas of the work that you're doing, which really looks outside and brings the experimental and the uncommon into a practice like flamenco or Spanish dance arts or Spanish speaking arts in general. Um, Dr. Meira Goldberg, I don't know how, would you want me to call you Meira or Dr. Goldberg? It's up to you. What would you prefer?
You can call me Maida. You can totally call me Maida. You
Okay.
should call me Maida, which is what you do all the time. So
And so,
why change now?
of course, so Meira is an esteemed flamenco scholar, researcher, and dancer who has performed across stages all over the United States and in Spain, and is now one of the foremost flamenco scholars in the United States, having released two books, Flamenco on the Global Stage, which is probably in reverse if you're looking on my screen, and Sonidos Negros, and is currently working on a new book, which, Meira, can you give us the title, please?
Oh, thank you. It's called Perra Mora, Love and War in the Body of a Woman.
Excellent. So Meira has been a teacher, CUNY, FIT, has worked with many organizations, um, and is one of my closest mentors. But on top of that, Meira is an artist which has these really profound and brilliant ideas, which is how I'm going to segue into you, Fanny, is a few years ago, which is the conception of her piece Raíz, which was a spectacularly powerful piece about women's bodies, aging, femininity, virility, desire, loss, all those things that people start to ask themselves about when it comes to their value, not only as an artist, but as an individual in this world and how we are looked at and what happens when a woman, and I say a woman, but like I can also say, expand upon that for people who, what happens when they no longer feel that same sense of desire or that power that is given to you when you're sort of put away because of age or your looks or no longer fit within that realm of beauty. Now, Fanny Ara is an amazing artist who has been on the stage and in the theaters for many decades as well, who's originally from the French Basque region, correct, Fanny? And has performed with a multitude of different artists everywhere on in media, on television, and on theater, and has an amazing technical ability that really marries modern dance and contemporary experimental movement with flamenco in a way to create this fusion that really speaks to an authentic and individual approach to how they create and look at music, sound, experience, movement, inflection. And a vivaciousness and energy that to the stage that is kind of daring, I would say. It's a challenge. Every time you look at Fanny on stage, she's offering you up a challenge for how to look at something, which I think in our flamenco world, which, and I say very specific, I mean, in the flamenco world a lot, and I don't want to generalize, but as my experience as a person who is a baby flamenco in the United States, is very much one dimensional, one perspective. And I think the two of you as artists really offer up the idea of is really the danger of the one narrative. Fanny, you not too long ago, I believe in 2018, released, or in 2019, I want to say, Tattooed with your company Sintonia,
Yeah.
which was a very powerful piece that talked about these same issues and themes that Meira was talking about, but it added one extra layer, which is domestic violence, abuse, emotional violence and abuse. What does it mean to internalize pain? What does it mean when we are dealing with trauma and wounds? When those wounds are inflicted from somebody who is supposed to love and care for us, and they become our victimizer, and we become the victim. And so I just want to begin there with this idea of, well, I'll give some context. Part of the reason I was really interested in this conversation had to do with what it meant to be desired and to not be desired. My own personal experience of having been somebody who was invisible because of my looks, to one day being completely visible and not knowing how to understand that, and how that changed my relationship to men specifically, but to the world especially, of how I viewed myself in relation to desirability and being wanted. The narrative I was told was, how you look determines whether or not somebody will love you. So you have to be sexual to be beautiful. You have to offer sex as intimacy. And if you love somebody, that means you're going to do whatever they ask you to do. And that creates a kind of danger because you don't learn boundaries. And so in many ways, in an interesting way, the situation with COVID has forced me into a kind of sobriety with that, where I am cut off from people, but it leaves me and people in that way of being an object or offering myself up in this sexual desirable way, because that's the only narrative I'm fed. And so now I'm in a place of, what does it mean to have true intimacy, to be seen, heard, and understood, to be valued in a soulful, intellectual, and emotional way, and not just based off what I can offer you pleasure-wise in a physical way. And so I want to start off there. And I know that's a lot of words. So, and that's a big, huge thing that you can't, chew on in an hour.
Big
but
idea.
Let's just start from there and kind of talk about, what does it mean to be desired, to not be desired, when that sort of relationship for both of you changed?
Meira, what are you gonna say?
Okay, I'm gonna go. I'll go first because I'm gonna say age before beauty. I think in a way, I mean, Hans, I have so many things. I have so many thoughts about what you're saying, and I'm interested in talking about the relationship of trauma and abuse in that way as well. I think that's an important aspect to sort of consider in this whole thing. But on the most fundamental level, I'm a mother, and for me, I remember at some point, kind of wheeling my first kid, down the street in a stroller, all, haggard and tired and sleepless and whatever, and sort of thinking to myself, I remember very clearly thinking to myself, oh, okay, beauty is done. Like, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And, I sort of felt at that time that it was almost like I had satisfied the biological imperative, like my beauty had done what it needed to do, like on this kind of basic, procreational level. And so done, to worry about that anymore. And of course, there are many stages that one goes through in life, but and I certainly have won't say that I don't care about beauty at all, that I stopped caring about beauty, but in that moment I had this kind of very clear, sort of felt a very clear distance from beauty, and it felt very freeing to me. It felt very liberating.
Wow. So you got there. So you got lucky. You actually got there.
To that point. Oh, I see. Well, I'm a lot older than you are, Fanny. So like, you never know. I'm sure you can, um, your attitudes toward beauty, will change and can change.
Right. I mean, I remember being a teenager and think, oh, I can't wait to be my 30s because I'm not going to think about beauty no more. I thought I was going to be completely free. Because at 17, I had some eating disorder because I wanted to be a dancer. And my mom was just like, your body is just not looking like you're going to be a dancer. And that just like, my chip was, oh, really? So it's going to make me not be a dancer. So I just stopped eating, like
Wow.
from one day to another. And then, so I got over it. Oh, God. Long story short. And then I remember that the French beauty, because I moved to Spain, the French beauty was very different from the Spanish one. And that was for me like liberating in that sense, because French, we all have to be so skinny. My whole family, they're all so skinny. And I was the only one with like curves, and I was not understanding that it was okay to be curvy. And so I went to Spain and I saw those beautiful women, and I was like, wow, actually curves are beautiful. So it was like very impacting for me. And then I moved to the States, and that's where I met people. I never felt okay with my body ever. And so I think that once you have eating disorder, it's in you forever anyway. So you actually never really healed. And that's what happened in this abusive relationship, the last one, which was the biggest one, where he knew about it and he just went for it. And that just completely, I went down. Like my view of beauty was completely, I used to be like pretty hippie, not much makeup. And he was like, no, 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 no. You got to do fake nails. You got to do, I had to buy all these things for my hair. And he was like, you got to be your best all the time. And then he was telling me that he never saw a woman with thighs so thick. And I would be like, first of all, why in hell are you with me if you don't even like what you see? So for me, it was something that I was not understanding. What is it? And for 5 years, I've never felt so bad. Like I actually felt better during my eating disorder that I felt during those 5 years, because nothing was okay. Like he would talk about my nose, about anything. And it was very, very such a trauma for me to go back to maybe love myself a tiny, tiny bit. And I'm still on it, like just trying to. And it's funny because a lot of people will tell you, oh, you're so pretty, and oh, cha-chi-cha-cha-cha-cha. And you're like, wow, you just don't see it. You see nothing but just things that you want to change. So it's very bizarre. And I'm about to be 38, and I'm like, here I am still trying to find beauty in me. It's very bizarre. And I'm not even talking about like working in LA was also very like it's very bad for your self confidence. LA it's really bad. I don't know how New York is very in that sense, but whenever you work in Los Angeles, that's where you really see, oh wow, I am worth absolutely nothing. So yeah, bizarre.
Wow.
I want to kind of bring up something that you mentioned, and I kind of wanted to ask you both of you about it, which the performativity of desire and beauty and being wanted. The two of you are performers. You have been performing for a long time. You've been you are on the stage, and especially in something like flamenco, you know, you have the trope of la gitana, and she's really beautiful and she's sexy and she's, you know, tetona y culona y morena, etc. You know, add all the things. You know, she's basically, you know, she's a sex blow up doll in some ways, that they make her into this, like, you know, something, which is the way that I think so much of consumption works with theater, television, media, is to people are there to consume it. And so it's interesting you saying, Fanny, how you're on stage and everybody says, she's like, oh my God, you're so beautiful, and you're so this, and you're so that. And it's just like, that is all smoke and mirrors. Behind this is something much more. What you see is not who I am. And I think for the both of you, that's very true in different ways. You know, Meira, you are a beautiful woman. You know, you have done the same kind of work Fanny has worked. You have been on the tablaos. You've done the vivacious, like, blow up doll situation. And now you're on the other side where you're also now, I am the scholar. But in some ways, in the opposite end, you know, because you are a woman who is older, a woman who has children, you become la matrona, you're matronly, you are no longer an object of sexuality. So it's
Right.
completely stripped on you. And so when you both are on stage, there's this performativity. And I really want to ask you about your experience of what it's like when you are on the stage and you cease being a singular individual and you become an idea, and an idea that doesn't match up with who you are, but what people project onto you.
Mm. Well, I mean, I'll jump in, you know, so Fanny, I want to say that it's interesting to me because I mean, I'm from LA, but most of my flamenco dancing I did not do in LA, so I don't know what the scene is like there, but I will say that I never had that sort of, like, I think the kind of thing you're describing is like this kind of Hollywood, you know, like you have to be like really perfect and for TV or whatever, you know, like my whole standard of beauty um was different than that, and yeah, and closer to the hippy dippy, I would suppose, you know, more natural sort of style. I don't know. I've always been a tablao dancer. Like I've never been a, you know, my most important experience has been tablao, and that's kind of where my orientation is. So that's part of it, I suppose. But you know, also Hans, I want to say that to me, I don't think of this character as, you know, like what Belen talks about, the guapa, you know, the anti-guapa and the guapa. I mean, I don't see this character ever, you know, as a blow-up doll. Like I always see, to me, the thing that draws me to flamenco is the authenticity of oneself, you know, when you're there in, you know, in performance. And so I always think that the thing that's behind the surface is very present and very is very present. Like I always think that the person behind the surface, behind the beautiful surface, is present. But then also, as you say, you know, like, so okay, that's one side of it. But yes, you know, there's no question about how, you know, as you get older and your hair goes gray, you know, as I get older and my hair goes gray, you know, you stop, like, you know, you walk down the street and you just notice that no one notices you. You really do cease to exist in a lot of ways. Like, you know, like the whole, as you say, Fanny, you know, the whole kind of commercial, you know, whatever. Like there's, you know, there's so much about in our culture that's so screwed up about, you know, how we think about our elders, and you know, and how we don't allow people to mature and to develop, you know, into, as you say, like, you know, a mom, you know, a matron, a matriarch, or whatever, you know, whatever that role is. And you know, I think of, I mean, I think flamenco, I don't think flamenco buys into that on a lot of levels. I think flamenco kind of counters that on a lot of levels, at least the people I know and respect. I know so many, women who are, senior to me and who I just venerate. And I think that their power as dancers and as performers doesn't have anything to do with being beautiful. It's totally about other things. Like it has to do with being, and it really has to do with being an elder in the community, I think, in a way, like, representing your community in a way.
Yeah, I mean, flamenco really has those two sides too. It's like we can look, like you say, like this pretty picture, but also flamenco has this like very dirty side of like we getting deep down in emotion. And like if you like how many photos do you see of this beautiful woman that is just like giving so much emotion? And that's what I love also in flamenco. It's like we don't ever think, oh, am I pretty here? It's just
Right.
feelings and feelings and feelings. And I think it's very therapeutic. I think we, without even knowing it, we chose flamenco because I think it's, at least for me, it's my only way to really just vomit everything that I am. And flamenco for me is the only way. Like I hate my body, but when I dance, I am completely in love with my body. And the way I want to dance is to actually accentuate every curve of my body. And and it's funny, like when you're a dancer, you're so thankful of what actually your body can do. And it's, so there is, I don't think we ever think about, am I pretty? And then when people tell you, flamenco, it's so sexual. I'm like, it has nothing. Tell me I'm sensual, but I am not selling you any kind of sex, little boy. Zero. So, isn't it? Like, how many times did they say, oh my God, it's so sexy? I'm like, what is sexy about it? Or tell me that a woman that is just like in power, yeah, that's sexy, but don't tell me I'm dancing sexy because that is not what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? So it's bizarre also for a man that find it sexy a very powerful woman, but then they don't want them.
Uh-huh.
So there is also this thing of like, oh, you want a strong woman, but you can't handle it. So it's kind of bizarre.
I mean, I feel like, I feel like, if you think about the way our society is and just the way women are boxed in our society so much. And I mean, I just think it's very striking that, in some ways we have more freedom on stage than we do off stage, in that sense. I mean, you know,
But I think it's the only place we feel completely free, right? Isn't it?
I mean, I think in some ways, for sure. Yeah.
I don't
I mean,
think ever, pardon, I don't, pardon. I don't think we can ever say what we feel in that deep other than dancing, right?
yeah, I mean, I think that I think for myself, I work to, I think part of my, whatever spiritual or psychological practice or whatever that is to try to find that in different ways. Like, so for example, for me, a big part of that has been like, when I stopped performing pretty much and kind of moved into scholarship, um, you know, that was a big way of trying to find a voice that would be my voice, in a different medium, like in a different way. And, so that was very empowering for me in a lot of ways. Like I'm sure I can imagine for you, Fanny, that being a choreographer and making work, that's not, traditional work is probably, it might be similar to you in that way. Like it's a way of finding a voice for yourself in a different mode, than in what we, normally do, what's traditional in terms of flamenco. So that's certainly something that I think has been important to me.
Right. I mean, like you say, like being a choreographer in 2007, I decided to choreograph something about abuse. That was before my show Tattooed, because I had really had to let it go. And I went to Italy, and that was my first time saying ever abused, because I had to explain what the choreography was about. And I've done that choreography a little bit all over the world, and you will not believe what people do in class. It's just like, first of all, it's like, okay, she just said that she was abused, and now I have to dance it. And then you've got this group of girls that have known each other for years, but none of them knew that some of them were abused. And pretty much in every single class, at least 70% of the girls were abused. So that's like, already you're like, okay,
that's
like,
crazy.
This is huge. But then after each class, we will have like lots of cocktails, but everyone will tell their stories. And it was something that was so powerful. And I was like, wow. And that's when I understood that, yes, we're dancers, blah, we're choreographers, but we have the power to bring things out of people in a classroom for 3 days. I'm just traveling for 3 days. And in 3 days, whatever happens, it's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. And I really hope that every artist is understanding how much responsibility we have to really tell our own story, or something that, even if it's a story of someone else, but to open the conversation, because there is a lot of conversation that should happen through art and through dance. And it was just so impacting for me. It was, and also to see that most of them were actually abused. It's so sad, but also so nice to be able to all kind of like being in this therapeutic kind of mood. It was, and I'm still doing it. So I just actually did an intensive during COVID where I'm actually offering that that choreography, and I never in the publicity said that it was about abuse. So when they got the choreography, they were like, what? And I got so many messages. Again, I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And we really have a responsibility to keep on talking about all of this. It's just made me realize how much responsibility as artists we all have. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Thank you.
Trying to maintain for you all. Sorry.
No, that's amazing. I'm just like hearing you both talk about these experiences of, and it's, this is the thing is there's, every coin has two sides and everything always feels like really opposite, but it's really all the same, part of the same thing, the same kind of experience. What does it mean to be made invisible? And then to reprioritize in a way that you take back that visibility, but in a way that says that thing that you think is of value actually means shit. Because this other thing that I'm going to offer, which is healing, which is understanding, which is learning, which is therapy, which is catharsis, which is investigation and research, those are the things that, hold weight. Beauty can't hold weight. Beauty is ephemeral, it's temporal, it goes away and it gets redefined. And so does desire and sexuality, which is not to say that, sexuality and desire goes away in age, because I know plenty of people who get into their middle life, who are in their twilight of their life, and they fuck like horny rabbits. They're always having sex. I think that's fantastic. May all of our pieces work when we get to those ages where we're still like going, and that we can, get past it, and that we can, get to recontextualize it. Which brings me to another question, and it's interesting. It's a conversation that I had in the last piece of Aire Libre that I did, which was our relationship to failure. And that's something that I'm still really interested in, because failure exists within, failure is it's a web. And the question of what does it mean, aging and failure and the body. And I asked this one because I am dealing a lot of this year, what has been a year of failure for me. 2020 was a year of failure. And, now 2021 feels like it's another year where I'm trying to mitigate what happened, but also recontextualize my relationship to failure. But also, what does it mean to fail in my body as my body ages? What does it mean that I'm no longer able to do the things that I could do, or that my body,
Oh,
and, did I go away?
we lost you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, say it again, because what does it mean to fail? And then you froze.
okay.
For a
Sorry.
second.
So the question of what does it mean to failure? What does it mean to fail as our bodies age and change? And I am definitely, having been a person who's never, I came to dance older. I have taken a long time to learn the things I've needed to learn. So I would know what it's like to be a young dancer or a young mover, but I'm also don't know what it's like to, I feel my body failing. I feel things that I could do that I no longer able to do, and having to recontextualize that narrative for myself. As well as I'm aging, getting into to middle age, in connection with that desirability, when I'm no longer young and pretty, my body is failing on stage. My body is failing in relationship to others in the way that I think I'm supposed to be. My body is failing in relation to itself. How the fuck do I deal with all that? On top of everything else that's failing in my life, with all the things that I wanted for myself that I know I could do, I can't. So it seems like failure is this big thing that is really weighing down on me. So I'd love to hear about your relationship to failure, to your bodies, failure to your art practice, failure to your life, and how that's changed, you in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, I'll go first again, just to sort of keep the order. I mean, I just don't think you can say honestly, or I certainly can't say honestly, that failure is not painful to me. Failure is very, very painful. And there are certainly things that I have failed at, and it's very pervasive. I think, it's a very pervasive uh, emotion. But, at the same time, I mean, like Raiz, you were talking about Raiz. I mean, that was, that piece was an experimental piece, Fanny. So I know you didn't see, but it was an experimental piece that I did that was really, what we said was we were exploring the power of instability. And so it was really about, kind of, well, what is there in the journey, what is there in the process, as opposed to arriving at, the point of success, let's say. What is there, what emotions are there, and what emotional strength is there, I guess, in that process. And, you know, I do think, I mean, you know, flamenco certainly, you know, my body, I mean, you know, I'm 63, so like my body's gone through a lot of changes in my flamenco career. And, you know, one thing about flamenco that I always admire is people that are able to kind of hone down their, you know, movement. It's not about like, you know, whatever, like your virtuosity. It's about your art, your artistry, and, you know, and do more with less, basically, you know, is really what it comes down to when you, as your body starts to fail you. Um, but I do think that, I think that one of the most important things about failure, which is why I really, I think it's important to try to embrace failure in that, because failure is discerning. Failure is discernment. So it's kind of like if you're in this process of trying to do something or make something in a way that's successful, and you sort of see, you compared, you know, what's in front of you, let's say, with that ideal of yours, you know, it's a way of there being a dialogue about, you know, about form, about, you know, about what it is that you're trying to do. And it's kind of a way of discerning, I think, better discerning, you know, what it is that you're really after, like what really is important. You know, as you make a decision about, like, you know, if your body is failing and you can't do the kind of footwork that you used to do, or I can't do the footwork that I used to do, let's say, but, you know, making the decision about, well, what's essential there, what can I let go of, and what can I keep a hold of, and have that be, you know, that sort of teaches me about what's important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's just failure in the body, and I think we're so lucky to be in flamenco. I don't ever feel like I'm failing in my dancing, like
Good.
like in a way. Okay, that didn't sound right, but like sure, there's things that I can't really do like before. I really don't care because there's it's limitation less what I can do. So if I can't do the quebrada that I used to do, that I was like kind of like my signature move, well now you know my body is telling me to go easy. I don't care. I'll just look for other movements that maybe before I didn't even think of. And that's what I like about getting mature in your dancing. It's just that you don't even want to say the same thing that you used to say. It's like, there's no way I'm going to do the same movement that I've done when I was younger because I have completely something else to say. So I don't ever, maybe I'm very lucky, but I never, ever encounter in dancing failure. It's just, I found it super interesting that your body is just like, this is not going to work. And I'm like, all right, thank you for the challenge because now I have to, right? It's like, I actually take it as a very, very good thing. I actually love that process, but I've never taken that as a failure. Never. And then, you know, when you have to maybe learn a choreography that is not yours from someone else, there's no failure either. It's just, you just know you got to practice more and you'll get it, and always have faith that if they call you it's because they think you're capable of doing it. But then like anything else, it's like I think I don't really know failure, but I know definitely anxiety of trying to be my best all the time. This it's which is a whole the problem to have. But failure, I don't dancing, huh? I don't see it. I won't take failure. But yeah, No, but like you say, you know, yeah, maybe you're not going to be able to do the escobilla that they used to do. Who cares, right? And like you were saying, like we're learning more and more that doing less is doing more. So it's actually you actually enjoy that process. And we all say that flamenco, you get actually more into it as you grow older. So I think we're very lucky in that. I think we're the only kind of like type of artist
Dance form.
that, right?
Yeah,
In any dance form. I think we're very
yeah, it's
lucky
true.
about it.
It's true. It's true.
Cool. This is great.
Okay.
God, there's so many things. I mean, funny enough, I'm out of questions. I thought I had more questions. I was like, oh no. But
Oh no.
you know, one of the things that for me I keep coming back to, you know, in this relation to how is the body changing? How is it failed? Where do I find freedom in that failure? And where does that freedom become actually a kind of success, a liberation? Um, what does it mean to just exist within ourselves and within our bodies in this practice, especially because we are on stage and we are in the gaze, the view of somebody else, and their perceptions and the ideas that they put on us, and like pancake and what you become. And I want to kind of ask you both to kind of speak a little bit about your artistic process. You know, I know, Meira, you haven't, you know, you've been focusing on your research and your work. But part of the excitement of bringing you on was that piece Raíz that you did, and seeing Fanny's work and seeing so many parallel narratives happening in different ways, but all kind of the same. So I'd really kind of love to hear you both in conversation about, um, you know, Fanny talked a lot about how she manifested this idea. Um, and I guess let me pivot the question a little bit. Now that you both have created these pieces, the question is, where do you go from there? Thinking about all these things of failure, of beige, of trauma, of pain, of instability, of change, of shifting, and of, you know, the idea of success being a pinpoint, but mastery being an ascension.
I mean, I don't know. I frankly, I'm not worrying right now about where my choreography is going to go. Frankly, I mean, that's really just not where my intense life is right now. Like my intense life is, you know, in the research, frankly. And but in the research, I am thinking a lot about failure and desirability and beauty and those things. And I guess I'm sort of looking at them. I guess I'm looking at kind of what you were saying, Fanny, about, you know, um, saying no. I refuse to fail. I refuse to consider failure. I refuse. And there's something about that. There's something about that that I think is very important. And it has to do with, you know, the way the outside world will look at us and define us and, you know, categorize us and say this or that. And then, you know, if you as a person, as a thinker, as an artist, as a creator, can sort of, and I know I'm not saying this well, but can find a way to turn that around. And you know, I'm thinking in terms of trauma, of how trauma can generate, and I think we can think of millennial trauma, frankly. Like I think of, you know, for me, you know, as a Jewish person, like I totally think that there's millennial trauma that I inherit. And I think this is true for a lot of people, you know, in different social categories. And it's kind of like, how do you use that as a source of strength, basically? And how do you deny the person who wants to define you in one way or another, and just deny that and say no, that's not what's true. And and if you can, I feel like what's there is a lot of rage. Like, I feel like with trauma there comes rage in some ways, and I think that sort of anger can be very powerful and kind of explosive. It can get you past the point of resistance, and say, no, I refuse to accept this as defeat. I'm going to do it. I'm going to find another way. Like, I don't know, there's something that's kind of very powerful and energizing about, the anger that I think is also part of trauma, I feel. And I do feel like in flamenco, to me flamenco is a lot about that. Like, I think in some ways flamenco is not afraid to inhabit that kind of anger, and I think that's one of the things that makes it really powerful.
For sure. For me, 2019, tattooed was made like in a 1.5 year process. But like, if we're talking about the whole abuse stuff and the failure, that's why I called Jose Maldonado to work with us. I love the work that I did for this show because I asked him to completely destroy me to reconstruct me. So I feel completely liberated. I don't, like, you're talking about the anger and stuff like that. I used to have, when I first worked on Tattooed, I was so angry. And I wanted that to be in the show. And then I was like, hell no, I don't want to be angry. I just want to let my feelings go. But the work we have done with Jose Maldonado was so painful for a 1.5 years, because he just, like I just said, he destroyed the hell out of me. But through dance, we never talked about it, but he made me understand that in dance, I could say so many things without being angry, and I did not know that. That I had no idea I could talk about trauma without feeling angry. This man, right? I know, right? And this man was genius enough to do, he would do like a game, but it was like very psychologic way of thinking about dance. That, I mean, it was exhausting. I cried and I cried. I never felt angry. And I think it was very nice not have anger in the show. And now, through Jose Maldonado's work, he healed so much out of me. And, COVID happened just after, and my dancing have completely changed in 2020. I don't recognize at all what I've done before. I don't even know how I'm going to dance tattoo again, because I don't even remember this kind of dancing. It's very bizarre. But 2020 has been a blessing in the fact that he just did that to me, and now I was alone to actually have the time to work on it. But I had no idea that anger could get away. It's you would think that's your goal, right? That's where you want to get, but he did it
like
somehow.
One Thunder.
Yeah, but it was pretty dramatic, but he did it. It's very nice to find a kind of like mentor in that sense. which I never had before. So now I have like major respect for the man because he knew. Because I didn't even know him. And I asked him to do the show, and he was like, sure. And I was like, okay. And it's so painful, right? Like, am I going to talk about my life? And he didn't want to know. He just, I don't know. It was pretty magical.
That was lovely, both of you. You know, I think what hearing you both talk about and hearing what is really a truth, a universality, is that we all have some kind of pain, we have some kind of trauma, we have some kind of shame, and we have some kind of fear and some kind of anger that comes from a sense of vulnerability. And that we're really taught is, well, kind of weakness, to show anything but a certain kind of way of being, like you're powerful and you're energetic, and you know, if you don't present the things that everybody expects you to be, then there is some kind of shame that's put upon us, and in that shame we feel a sense of vulnerability because we have not met the standards that somebody else has put upon us, and that means that we are in danger or that we are exposed. And to be exposed brings us back to that reptilian primalistic brain of, if I'm exposed, I'm in danger, I might die. And it's such an interesting correlation, understanding that all that comes from each other. The idea that being victimized should be rage and anger, and I want to hurt that person because they hurt me. And the other side of that is, I am so sad for that person because they hurt me, because they're so hurt as well. Or the other side of the things I thought I could do, or the things, the ideas I had for myself, the big ideas, I never got to them. And so this is where I'm at. And as my body changes and the things I want to do, I can't, because I can't. So how do I redefine that shame that I have in not being able to do what I can with my body, or look the way I was supposed to, or have the relationship I was told I was supposed to have and how it was supposed to look. And it's, you know, these are conversations that I always say at the end of every one of these, they don't end here. It's like they're a drop in the water and the ripple just keeps going. And I thank the both of you for taking this time, and the excitement in hearing you both in conversation, because as far ends of the, you know, country you are, and as far different as the way that you do your work is, the idea is all the same. You are there to present a kind of truth for yourselves, historically, factually, but honestly. And so with that, I think that ends today's conversation. Thank you so much. So I'm going to end the conversation there, and I send you both lots of love and warmth and healing out in the universe. And I really hope that the messages you bring, Fanny, with the work you're doing, really give people a freedom and a sense of voice. And I hope the work that you're doing, Meira, and the research lets people understand that they have agency and ability to like also have that voice as well. Abrazos a dos.
Yes. I'm so glad to meet you, Fanny.
I know. You can go so fast.